Now, Funky Dineva has completely shifted his position on Claressa Shields, so let's take a look at what he posted because this change in tone is definitely interesting. He said, "We actually owe it to the culture to support Claressa Shields." In the caption, he explained that they need to rethink the way they view her, basically admitting that his previous approach may have been too harsh. He said he knows Claressa gets on a lot of people's nerves, but argued that the entire Papoose and Remy situation should not matter when judging her career as a boxer. He pointed out that even though he is not a huge fan of the sport, whenever women's boxing comes up, Claressa Shields is almost always part of that conversation. And his argument is simple. She is an Olympian, she has achieved an incredible amount professionally, and she represents the kind of black excellence people constantly say they want to see celebrated. He basically said the black community complains about representation, yet when a successful black woman becomes someone young girls can look up to professionally, people turn around and tear her apart. And he admitted that he has participated in that himself. He then said he has changed his position and will approach his coverage of Claressa differently going forward, before congratulating her on the win. Okay, I have no problem with him changing his opinion because people are absolutely allowed to look at a situation differently over time. But here is where I think the argument starts falling apart, because my issue with Claressa has never been about her being a black woman. Claressa could be white, Hispanic, Asian, or any other race, and if she were behaving the same way online, in interviews, and in public conversations, I would still have the exact same criticism. That is the distinction people keep missing, and I am not going to excuse someone's behavior simply because they share my race. Funky Dineva himself has made multiple videos criticizing Claressa in the past, and I believe I even reposted one of those clips in a short at one point. The criticism was not simply about her boxing career either, because a lot of us, myself included, have said she should focus more on boxing instead of constantly trying to present herself as a celebrity or baddie. Funky has made similar points before, including saying that he did not find her particularly likable. So that was his opinion at the time, and now his opinion has changed, which is perfectly fine. But what I cannot agree with is using that change of opinion to suggest that everybody else is wrong, simply because women's boxing conversations include Claressa. Nobody is denying that she is a boxer or taking away the work she put into becoming successful. The problem is that her public behavior can overshadow those accomplishments, especially because of how openly she has discussed her relationship with Papoose. And let's be real, Claressa and Papoose could have kept their relationship completely private if they wanted to, and we would not have had nearly as much information about what was happening between them. Yes, Remy brought the situation into the public eye, but after that, Claressa and Papoose still had choices about how they handled everything. They could have simply said that until the divorce was finalized, they were going to keep their relationship private, stay together behind the scenes, make occasional public appearances, and stop feeding the internet with constant comments about each other. If they had kept things under wraps, the conversation would have been completely different. Instead, the situation became public, and now people are being criticized for discussing a relationship that has repeatedly been brought into the public conversation. Claressa has addressed Papoose in interviews, social media posts, and public comments, and whenever she brings him into the conversation, people are naturally going to react. We are not creating that part of the story. They are putting it out there themselves. So when people suddenly say, okay, she had her fight in Atlanta, and use that as a reason for everyone to stop talking about everything else, I have questions. I do not even believe Funky attended the fight, but let's say the event had taken place in Flint or somewhere else. Would the reaction have been exactly the same, or is Atlanta somehow changing the narrative? That is the part I do not understand, because people are making it sound like Claressa is simply being attacked for no reason, when there have been plenty of public moments that sparked criticism. She has reportedly threatened to confront someone in Memphis. She has been involved in a physical altercation with another female boxer, and she has continued making public comments involving Remy. So why should everyone suddenly pretend none of that happened simply because she is an Olympian? If another public figure behaved the same way, people who cover celebrity drama, Instagram trends, and breaking entertainment stories would discuss it exactly the same way. That has nothing to do with race, and nobody is saying Claressa is not black or denying her accomplishments because of that. At the same time, she has also faced criticism for comments directed at other black women, including insults about their appearance. So I do not understand why being a boxer suddenly means all of that behavior should be ignored. He could have simply said, "We owe it to her and we owe it to the culture to support her career," and honestly, I would have understood that argument. But when the message becomes that everyone else is the problem and that the Papoose and Remy situation is none of our business, that is where I have to push back, because it became public business through the people involved in the situation themselves. That is the reality. Remy has largely tried to move forward quietly, while Claressa has continued bringing this woman into the conversation, and then when Remy responds, suddenly everybody wants to ask why she is still talking about it. And I'm sorry, but you cannot repeatedly unload publicly and then act shocked when somebody finally responds. Claressa was an accomplished athlete long before this relationship became part of the conversation, and nobody is taking those achievements away from her. But we also cannot pretend that every criticism is unfair while giving her unlimited room to criticize others. Now, let's look at what Claressa herself has already posted, because this is exactly where the larger argument comes into play. And then I want to circle back to Funky, because there is something else I need to point out. This is precisely what people have been trying to explain about the fight and the surrounding narrative. Claressa had her fight, and leading up to the event, there was a lot of discussion about ticket sales. By the day before the fight, I knew plenty of tickets had been distributed, although I cannot say exactly how many were given away or purchased. We had all been watching Ticketmaster ever since those tickets went on sale, and as of the day before the event, the venue was still not showing as completely sold out. Now, there were definitely people in the building, and there appeared to be a significant crowd, with tickets reportedly being distributed and others potentially purchased closer to fight night. I cannot tell you exactly how every ticket was handled behind the scenes, but based on what was visible publicly, the venue was not completely sold out. There were still empty seats, and that is simply what people were able to observe. So we are not going to rewrite history and pretend Claressa personally sold out that entire event when the available information did not show that happening, and apparently she believes she did. So let's take a look at what she posted, because this is where things get even more interesting. Somebody on X posted the comparison you see on the left, and the account basically claimed Claressa sold out Atlanta without Jake Paul, without Netflix, without being on an undercard, without getting popped for PEDs, and without losing 3 times to the same opponent. Claressa reposted it and added, "Heavy on the PEDs. They can't copy that." Now that "they can't copy that" line is interesting, because we already know Remy and Juju have used similar language before, remember? It seems like every time Claressa responds, she finds a way to bring something Remy has said into her own messaging and make it part of her personal vocabulary. And by reposting that comment, she is essentially agreeing with the idea that she alone sold out Atlanta, and that is where I have a problem, because that is not giving the full picture, especially when Zeus played a major role in promoting the event, and there were clearly people interested in seeing the Zeus personalities and fighters involved. It was not simply Claressa walking into Atlanta by herself and magically filling the building. And honestly, this is exactly the kind of narrative I expected to hear once the fight was over, with Claressa taking the position that she was the sole reason those tickets moved. But somehow we are also supposed to respect every part of the narrative immediately, even though the fight literally just happened the night before. This post went up early that morning, around 9:14 a.m., and Claressa was already online reposting it and getting right back into her usual social media activity. She was already talking her talk, responding to people, throwing jabs, and doing exactly what she normally does online. And that is important, because when Alicia had her fight, Claressa did not exactly allow her to enjoy that victory peacefully. She went on live and criticized Alicia, calling her an amateur and basically dismissing the fight instead of simply allowing her to celebrate her accomplishment. Alicia had actually faced a legitimate opponent and real competition, and that was a difficult fight for her. It was not some effortless matchup, and Alicia still managed to win that fight. I watched the fight myself, so I know what I saw. This situation, however, was widely viewed as a much easier matchup for Claressa, and that is why the dramatic reaction afterward felt excessive to me. She was dropping down to her knees after the victory, celebrating like she had just survived the toughest fight imaginable, when plenty of people already expected her to win comfortably before the opening bell. We already knew that going into it, so the reaction was not exactly shocking. But apparently, Claressa cannot just take the win, enjoy the moment, and log off for a little while. Even if you simply repost something without adding much commentary, you are still choosing to participate in the conversation, and Claressa is constantly adding her own thoughts to everything happening around her. So when Funky Dineva says what he said, I have to ask, are you actually watching her online activity every day? Are you seeing the things she posts, the people she responds to, and the conversations she starts? Because Claressa and Papoose have repeatedly made their relationship part of the public conversation, and they continue putting that situation in front of the audience. So when Funky suggests that we should somehow separate the Remy and Papoose situation from everything else, I honestly do not see how that can happen anymore. Claressa has released diss music, she has publicly criticized Remy, and she has called her a washed-up rapper. So when people respond to those comments, suddenly everyone else is supposedly the problem. Funky is absolutely entitled to his opinion, and if he wants to stop criticizing Claressa, soften his coverage, or simply approach her differently from now on, that is completely his choice. But you cannot tell everyone else that their reaction is automatically wrong just because you personally changed your position. I am sorry, but that is the part I do not like, and I really do not understand that argument. Now, let's look at what Claressa wore after the fight, because I actually did not see the outfit when she went out after the event. Apparently, they went somewhere to celebrate after the fight, and once again, people noticed what looked to them like another similarity to Remy's style. What Claressa wore is on the right, and I want you to pay attention to the pants, because that is where people are making the comparison. You can see the overall concept, although honestly, I think Remy's version was much more polished and classy, especially when it comes to the dress. But the point people are making is that Claressa appears to be taking inspiration from the same aesthetic, and that is why the comparison keeps coming up. And at some point, you have to ask yourself, how is someone supposed to simply move on with their life when they believe another person is constantly watching, copying, or responding to them? Then, the moment that person responds, suddenly you are being told that you are the one bothering them, and that you need to leave them and Papoose alone. Claressa is receiving both praise and backlash because people are responding to what she puts into the public space, and that is just how social media works. Of course, people are celebrating her right now and giving her praise because she just had a fight and she is a professional boxer, and this is exactly the distinction I keep trying to make. If she focused primarily on boxing, instead of constantly jumping online, discussing other people, dragging other people, calling people names, arguing in comment sections, and responding to every little thing, then a lot of this criticism would probably not exist in the same way. Whether somebody thinks that criticism is fair or unfair is another conversation entirely, but I do not understand why everyone suddenly becomes wrong simply because they are responding to the negative energy that she herself puts into the public conversation. Right now, she is riding a huge wave because she had her fight on her for an entire week, and clearly that attention has been a major part of the moment for her. She appears to enjoy that attention, and there is nothing wrong with enjoying your victory and having people celebrate you. But once the fight is over and Papoose eventually heads back to New York, I would not be surprised if the attention shifts again and another controversy starts. That is simply the pattern people believe they have been watching over the past couple of years. She had her fight with Franchon back in February, and at that time I was not even back to consistently making my videos, so I was not following every single development in real time. But I remember seeing the fight afterward, seeing that she was happy with the victory, and then watching some of the interviews where she discussed Franchon afterward. There seemed to be a relatively quiet period after that, not completely silent, but definitely a noticeable slowdown because she was not constantly doing interviews and putting herself into every conversation. And then, eventually, it seemed like the cycle started again, with one controversy after another, going live, making statements, responding to people, and creating more conversations around herself. So I think this current wave will eventually die down too, because when someone becomes accustomed to receiving attention and praise, the high from that attention can only last for so long. She won her fight, and nobody is taking that accomplishment away from her, because at the end of the day, Claressa won. Even if I personally believe Kay Scott was a relatively easy opponent for Claressa, the official result is still the same. Claressa won the fight. Fine, she won, and congratulations are appropriate, but that does not mean we suddenly have to pretend everything else about her public behavior has changed. So are we really supposed to believe that she is suddenly more likable simply because she won a boxing match? Because that is where I get confused, especially after hearing Funky criticize her so heavily before. Is he now saying Claressa has become likable because she got another victory? Because personally, I do not owe her automatic support just because she won a fight, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. I can acknowledge her boxing accomplishments while still refusing to support behavior and antics that I personally find problematic, because from my perspective, her public attitude has often come across as nasty, and that is simply not something I am going to overlook just because she is a successful boxer.